So I've opened up SketchUp and I see my little figure here. This figure changes every version, so if you see a different figure, that's no big deal. The reason why he's there is so he can give us some perspective about the size of the things we're creating based on the size of an average person. So a few things about the controls in SketchUp. A lot of what we're going to do involves the mouse wheel. So if I click the mouse wheel down like a button, I can do what's called orbiting. This will let me go all around the landscape and see from various angles. If while I'm doing this, I hold down the Shift key, I'm going to do what's called panning. So once again, this was orbiting, this was panning. The mouse wheel itself, if I roll it, will obviously zoom in and out. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give myself a zoomed out view where I'm sort of looking down on the male figure here. And I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to find my rectangle tool. If you don't see the rectangle tool, perhaps you see one of these other tools. Just click the down arrow and choose rectangle. I'm going to come up to about this point. We don't have to be super exact right here. And an important thing to note in SketchUp is that you're going to have a lot better success if you click instead of clicking and dragging. So I could make a rectangle one a couple ways. I could click and hold the mouse button down and drag a shape and let the mouse button go when I'm finished. Better habit to get into is to click once and then click a second time when you are ready to create the shape. So I can click once in the corner here. I am not holding the mouse button down at this point, and I can draw the shape I want. This is a good habit to get into for a couple of reasons, but for now just trust me. In the bottom right hand corner, you'll notice that as I make my rectangle, it's giving me the dimensions of the rectangle. It also allows me to be very precise, because what I can do is, without even needing to click in the box down there, I'm going to go ahead and tell the rectangle that I want it to be 100, and I'm going to use an apostrophe, and that means feet. If I don't include that, it's going to assume I want inches, and that'll be a very small rectangle. I'm going to make a comma, and I'm going to say 100. So I'm going to have a 100 by 100 foot square, and I'll press enter. There you have it. If I were to just draw the rectangle like this, before I do anything else, I can go ahead and type those numbers in as well. But as soon as I go and do something else, I no longer have the ability to change the dimensions in the bottom right hand corner. I would have to get rid of it and do it again. So I'll go ahead and press enter one more time, and there's what's going to end up becoming my yard. The second thing I'm going to do is go ahead and make my actual house shape. So I'm going to click about here and do the same thing. I'm going to start making a rectangle, and I think I decided I wanted this to be about 50 feet long by about 30 feet wide. So once again, I'm using apostrophes to denote the fact that I want to have feet and not inches, and I'll press enter. And that's what I'm looking for. Now is a good time to point out that SketchUp, like most programs, has a really easy shortcut key for undoing things, and that's to hold down the control button or command button if you're using a Mac and pressing the Z key. And you'll see that I just did that. I got rid of my rectangle. It's going to save several undos for you, so I could keep going back and probably get rid of my yard as well, like that. If I realize I've gone too far and I've undid one too many times, I can also redo. So the shortcut for that is Control Y. So I'll do that now, and I can get both of my things back. Undo and redo will be sort of your best friends as you're learning SketchUp, as you're going to make plenty of mistakes, and as long as you don't go forward too much, it won't be a problem because you can just undo and fix whatever's gone wrong. So at this point, we're going to get into what is probably the coolest part of SketchUp, and that's the sort of the core mechanic of how it works. And that is this, that we draw two-dimensional shapes like we've done now, and we're going to use some tools to bring them into the third dimension. So we have length and width, and I'm going to go ahead and grab what's called the push-pull tool up here, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this rectangle up into the height dimension. So you'll notice that as I hover over different shapes, they show you that they're highlighted by these little blue dots. So right now I want to go ahead and raise this rectangle off the ground. So like I said before, I'm not going to click and drag, although I could. It's a much better habit to get into just to click once, begin to move the mouse, and pull it up out of the ground like that. And I'm going to go ahead and make my house about, let's make it 26 feet tall. So before I click anything, I've written 26. I'll of course put an apostrophe down and press enter. And now I've raised this house from 2 dimensions into 3, and we are moving right along. We're going to go ahead and tackle the roof, which honestly is probably one of the most complicated parts of the whole process, but we'll go ahead and get it over with, and it'll also start looking much more house-like with a decent roof on it. I think actually I'm going to make the other side of my house the front, and I'm going to save this bigger portion for the backyard. So I'm going to go ahead and orbit around using the middle mouse button, just like that. And to do this, we're going to use a couple of tools. The first one we're going to use is the offset tool, and that's this one right here. What the offset does is it takes a shape, and it just basically recreates that same shape a little bit bigger or a little bit larger. So you'll see what I'm looking for is that I have my roof, the top of my house is going to be highlighted, as I can see by those little dots, and I'm just going to click once. And now when I move the mouse, I'm creating an offset. I could make one that's smaller than the roof, or one that's a little bit larger. And for our purposes, we're going to make it a little bit larger. I'm going to go ahead and type 1 foot, so 1 apostrophe, and press enter. And it's just going to add this little extra shape around the house. I've offset that. Now we are going to take the push-pull, and I'm going to start with the center here. And I'm going to click once, I'm going to raise it up, and I'm going to raise it up probably about 8 inches. So I'm going to type 8, and then the quotation marks, because quotation marks denote inches. I could just also type 8, and it will assume I mean inches, and press enter. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise up the second part to meet this part. And the easiest way to do that is to click here, and then just to bring my mouse to that line, it will automatically stop there and we'll be able to snap it together. So this is the first part of my roof. What I need to do now is I need to go ahead and get rid of these interior lines that I created before. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the eraser tool, and I'm going to erase these 4 lines. And you can tell that this is working because they'll turn blue, and then you can release the mouse button. And it's not unusual for that to happen, where by doing so I have somehow killed one of my walls. It's one of the quirks of SketchUp. I haven't really found a good way to prevent it from happening, but I know a really easy way to fix it. So I'm going to get sort of a little upward looking view here. I need to be able to see this corner and this corner, and I'm just going to grab my pencil tool, my line tool, and I'm going to, it likes to snap, which makes things really easy. I'm going to draw a line from there all the way across, and my wall comes back like it was never gone. That might happen for one of your walls, it might happen for 3 of them, it might happen for all of them. Like I said, I'm not sure quite why it happens, but it's easy to fix. While I have my line tool though, I'm going to go ahead and draw one more line. And what I'm going to do is I want to find the middle point of this part of the roof. So SketchUp does a really good job of doing that for me. It likes to snap to things. And one of the things it'll snap to is midpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and click once I find my midpoint. Now, what's happening here is the lines turn green, and that's what I want. In your case, it might turn red if your house is sort of facing the other direction, and that's fine too, but I want to see one of those things, either red or green. That means I'm moving straight along that axis, which is exactly what I want. To make it easier on myself, I can hold down the Shift key. And you'll see when I did that, that green line turned bold. I'm going to let go. So I'm going to press it again. That green line turns bold. Remember, it might be red for you. That's fine too. And what happens now is I am locked onto that axis. So no matter where I take my mouse, I'm locked in. And what I'm going to do is bring it all the way over to the other side. And I'm going to go ahead, and once I've found the edge there and it's clicked on, I'm going to go ahead and click the mouse to make that line. And here's where it's going to get really neat. I'm going to take my move tool this time, and I'm going to move this middle line straight upwards. And you'll see what happens here. But once again, I can do all kinds of funky things with this. What I want to do is I want to go straight upwards. And I know that's happening when it turns blue. So red and green denote going X and Y, but the blue is what would be called the Z-axis. That's going to be my height. So when it turns blue like this, and it says on blue axis, remember I can hold down the Shift, it's going to get bold, and now I can constrain it within this one axis, and it won't go to the side anymore like it was doing before. So I'm going to go ahead and get a decent shape, and click. And now I have created a nice roof. So it's a nice roof, but I think we could actually do something to make it look even more interesting. Before we do that though, I need to create a line that's not there. You'll notice that on this side I have this line, but I don't have one coming across this other side. And to do what I want to do, I need to create that line. So I'm going to go ahead and find this endpoint, click, and you'll see this time I'm going in the opposite direction I went last time, so now my line is red, and that's fine. So I'm going to hold down Shift to lock it in place, and I'm going to go all the way to the other end and click, and now I have that line I need, and I can do the same thing over here. Once I have that line, I can do this cool thing with the Move tool once again, where I'm going to take the corner up here. I'm going to click, and I'm going to move it over. Now, I'm on the green axis, which is exactly what I want, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And if I look down at the dimensions down there, I see that I'm gone about 6 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and type 6 apostrophe for 6 feet and press enter. That's important because that way I can make sure that this one is the exact same. So if you choose 8 feet, that's fine, but just make sure they're both the same. So I'll choose this one. I'll begin to move it in, and I'll stop, and I'll say 6 feet and press enter. And now my roof is even more interesting than it was before. So we have a vaguely house-shaped thing here. We're going to start doing some fine-tuning work. And before we do that, we're going to make some guides for ourselves. They're going to help us to make this look as good as it possibly can. I've grabbed the tape measure tool, and this tool works in one of two ways. Right now, if I were to click, it would literally allow me to measure things. So I'm taking this tape measure across, and at the bottom part of the screen, I can see exactly how long my line is. So you recall that we made the house 50 feet wide. There it is. I'm going to press escape. If I press the control button, just press it, I get that little icon in the bottom right hand corner of the tool. I've changed its function, and now what it's going to do is it's going to create some lines for me that I can use. I'll press escape to get rid of it. So I can go between those two functions by pressing control. And what I'm looking for here is, we said it was 50 feet wide. I want to make a line, so I need to make sure I see that little icon that's about halfway across, not about halfway, exactly halfway across. So I know that's going to be 25 feet. So I make the line. I'm going to stop what I'm doing, type 25 apostrophe, and press enter. Now I've got a line that's exactly halfway from my house. Well, how high was my house? What did I end up putting it at? Let's measure. Okay, you recall that I chose 26, which at the time might have seemed strange, but now maybe makes a little bit more sense because I can divide 26 very easily. So I'm going to go ahead and press control to make sure I'm going to be making a line, and I'm going to drag a line upwards, and I'm going to tell it, I'm going to type in 13 feet. And now I've sort of divided my house into 4 quadrants. I can very easily tell where the middle point is, etc. Okay, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm actually going to divide each one of these quadrants in half as well, and that'll make it easy for me to place things like windows in the correct spot. So I know that the midpoint here is 25 feet across, so 25 divided by 2 is going to be 12 and a half. So I'm going to make a line. I'm going to stop and type 12.5 feet, press enter. And I'll do the same thing over here, but I know at this point I'm going 25 plus 12 and a half, so I guess I'm going to be stopping at 37 and a half feet, like that. I know that from the bottom to the top here is 13 feet, which means half of that is 6 and a half, so let's drag a line up and say 6.5 feet. And so we'll do one more, so 6 and a half plus 13 is going to be 19 and a half. I think I forgot to type in the apostrophe. So 19.5 apostrophe. One more time. Let's see. 19.5 apostrophe. There we go. So I know it seems like a lot, but this is going to make my life a lot easier actually, and it's going to help make the windows and doors line up properly and not be sort of off-centered. We're going to go ahead and make some windows, and we're going to spend some time making sure that they are exact, and we're going to make sure that they're going to look good. So what I'm going to do is get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to do my best to start sort of up here, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to tell it to, and this is important because I've sort of done the math ahead of time, I'm going to say 42 inches, so I can say 42 comma by 62 and press enter. And that's about the size that I'm looking for. Now, what I really want to happen is I want this window to be centered around this point where the guides meet, and clearly right now it's not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my move tool, and I'm going to make sure that the window, the face in here is selected as denoted by those blue dots. I'm going to click one time, and I'm just going to try and move this as best I can to get it so it's just about centered. And I'll say that at that point is close enough. I don't think you'd have a hard time arguing that's not right on the center. So we're going to do a couple more things. I'm going to grab my offset tool, which we used for our roof. I'm going to click on the outside edge here. We're going to raise this up. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to raise up 4 inches, so I'll press 4, enter. And now I'm actually going to make some more guides, believe it or not. So I'm going to grab my tape measure. I'm going to make sure I see that little icon, that little dash dash plus. If I don't see it, I'll press the control button to bring it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a series of guides. I'm going to click on this guide. I'm going to move in this direction, and I'm going to type in 1 for 1 inch. I'm going to go back to the middle guide again. I'm going to click, and I'm going to move in this direction and say 1, enter. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to move down and say 1, enter. Come back to the middle and come up and say 1, enter. This is going to make making sort of the cross beams in the window much easier. So I'll grab my rectangle tool. I will start up here, and I'm going to draw a rectangle all the way down here. And once again, it doesn't snap nicely on those guides. That's why I made them. Do the same thing here. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to grip my eraser tool. I'm going to come in real tight. And I want to erase this line, the one that's in blue right now. I don't want to erase the guides yet. I'm going to come down, do it here, do it here, all of it. Basically, I'm turning this into one single shape with no lines separating it. So I'll hold down Shift and my middle mouse wheel, and finally, oops, my bad, Control Z. I'll zoom in some more to make it a little bit easier. That's the line I'm trying to get rid of. So now, I'm getting there. I'm going to go ahead and get my push-pull tool. I'm going to take this frame I've created, and I've done it right. The whole thing should be covered in blue dots at this point. If not, maybe I missed a line somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. I'm going to tell it to be out 1 inch. So 1, enter. Then I'm going to take each pane of glass, which is what this is going to end up being, and I'm going to push it inward. So I'm going to push in, and I'm going to say 2, enter. I'm going to do that all 4 times. 2, enter. 2, enter. 2, enter. And you can see that it's starting to look like a window. But if you don't believe me, let's go ahead and for the first time, let's play with some materials. I'll grab my paint bucket. And there's going to be all kinds of categories for you to use. The one you're looking for in this case is glass and mirrors. I'm going to grab sort of a standard glass material, and I'm going to click on each one of the panes of glass, and you'll see that now I can see through the window into the house behind it. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. So that, in my mind, looks like a window. But of course, no window would be complete without some shutters, so let's make some shutters. I am going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to draw an approximate shape, but I know that that I want this to be 66 inches by 30 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and that was a mistake. So let me go ahead and undo that. And actually, I think I meant to say 66 by 20 inches. Yeah, that looks much better. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my move tool. And I'm going to try and get that selected. One thing that you can do sometimes is get the select tool and select the thing first, and then go get your next tool, like the move tool, and that makes things a little bit easier. And I'm going to go ahead and line this up so it's just about even. I'm going to leave some room on the side because I'm going to offset this one as well. So I'm going to take the offset tool, and I'm going to pull it out by about 2 inches. And you'll see that I'm not quite lined up the way I would like to be. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my select tool, and I'm going to try and get just the shutter selected. It's important I don't get anything else, otherwise I'm going to pull some things out that I don't want to. So I've got that all together, and I'm just going to sort of finesse this into place like that. That's pretty close. Whenever I move things like that, it's a good idea to take a look around to make sure nothing else got moved. Sometimes what happens is you select things you don't realize, and what you might not realize at the back of your house, you've done some really strange thing without noticing, and you notice 10 minutes later when things are too late to fix. So I think we're good to go. So that looks fine to me. I'm going to make a couple more guides. So I'm going to come up here. Let's get this unselected. I'm going to get my guide. I'm going to take this. I'm going to come down 4 inches in the blue axis. 4 inches. And from there, I'm going to come down 1. Oops. Don't think that last one got made. So actually what's happening is it's drawing a line for me instead of making a guide for me. There we go. 1 inch. And I'm going to do this with the rectangle tool. I'm going to make this rectangle. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to type asterisk, and I think I want to have, let me think about this for a second. I'm going to need to have about 10 of these if I'm right. So I'm typing asterisk 10 or times 10 and pressing enter. Maybe not. Okay, so I've made this rectangle. I'm going to get it selected, just the small rectangle. I'm going to get my move tool, and I am going to press the control button 1 time, and just like the measuring tool, that little plus sign is going to pop up, and that's telling me that I'm making a copy. I'm not just moving this. And I'm going to bring this down 4 inches and press enter. And now, before I do anything else, I'm going to type asterisk. I'm going to type in 10, so times 10. And you'll see what happens is it automatically creates more of those at the same interval, which is really convenient. But obviously 10 wasn't quite enough. So let's type asterisk 15. That looks a little bit better. So that looks a little bit more like an actual shutter. Okay, so I guess my math wasn't quite as good as I probably should have been. I'm going to go ahead and get my eraser tool, and I'm going to erase this bottom part right here. It's going to make the selection at the bottom a little bit taller, but that's fine. It looks a little bit better than that. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to erase all these little lines in between like we did for the windows. And this is going to make my life easier here in a second. Because I'm going to do all of these, and then I'm just going to get rid of that completely. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back to my paint bucket tool, and you have to decide what color you want your shutters to be. If I paint them right now before I pull them out of the wall, it's going to make it really easy for me. Whereas if I pull them out of the wall and then go to paint them, I'm going to paint every individual little piece, and it's going to be really annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all the lines, pick a color, and paint it. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm picking this burgundy color. I just went from, I was on glass and mirrors, I went up to colors. And I'm just going to choose like this burgundy color. You choose whatever you want. And the fact that I erased all those little lines means the whole thing fills up at once, which is really nice. And now I can just pull the whole thing out of the wall together. I'm going to tell it 1 inch because the windows are out 1 inch. And that looks really nice. So you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to have to make all these windows and all these shutters on the house. And you do not actually. We are going to use some shortcuts to make our lives a little bit easier. The first thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to go find a white color if I can, and I'm going to paint the windowsill like that. I probably should have painted it earlier because you see now I have to go back and do all these little pieces, whereas if I had just done the whole thing before I pulled it out like I did with the shutter, I wouldn't need to do that. but I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff, so I want to make sure it looks good. So I'm getting all of the different pieces. Great. So now my window and one shutter are basically done. I'm going to get my select tool and I'm going to select the shutter by itself. I don't want to get part of the window. Great. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to make it a component. I'm going to call it shutter. Now I'm going to get my move tool. Before I do anything, I'm going to press the control key, which is going to add that little plus button. And I am going to move this thing straight across. Once I see the green arrow, green line, if I see the green line, there it is. I can hold down the shift key and I can move it straight over, just like this. And now I have two shutters and a window. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and get all three of these things together. I'm going to zoom around to make sure I don't have anything else selected. I don't seem to, which is great. I'm going to right click and I'm going to press make group. Now I took those three objects and I turned them into a single object, which is going to make this next step a lot easier. I'm going to get the move tool again. I'm going to press control again and I'm going to move this straight up. And I'm going to line it up just like that. Now I'm going to make my life even easier. I'm going to get both windows selected. I'm going to get the move tool. I'm going to press the control button and I'm going to move straight across. Once I'm on the green axis, I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to line them up with the guides and I'm going to put them down. So we went from having one shutter and one window to having 4 windows and 8 shutters, just like that. Not too bad. Okay, let's make one more window real quick. This one won't be too bad. We can actually start to get rid of some of these guides. We don't really need them anymore. I'm going to leave, actually I am going to leave that one there. I'm going to leave the 2 major ones where they are for now. And I'm going to create a couple more. I'm going to come to this middle line and I'm going to come this way and I'll say let's go 4 feet. Oops, I didn't put the apostrophe. 4 feet. I'm going to do it one more time. 4 feet. This way, 4 feet. Now I'm going to get a new tool I haven't used yet, and it's going to be the 2-point arc. Not just the arc, and I'm going to come to about here. I'm not coming down to the same line as the bottom of the window, a little bit higher than that. I'm going to click there. I'm going to come straight across. I'm going to click again, and I'm going to raise this arc upwards to about there. I'm going to get my pencil tool and I am going to connect those two things. I'm going to get my offset tool and I'm going to try to oops, that's what I should have done the first time, I guess. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to offset this by about 8 inches. I will bring it out, bring the windowsill out about 1 inch to match the others. I'm going to put the other one in about 2 inches to match the others. And at some point I will go back, I will get glass and mirrors, I will make that glass. Another neat trick is if you get this eyedropper here, and let's say I want this white color again, I get the eyedropper and I click in this white area and it's going to automatically select it for me. That would work for anything. So there's the red color, there's the glass color, but what I want is the white color. So I click it, I have the white color now, and I can fill in the windowsill, which once again I probably should have done before I actually pulled it out, but no big deal. And now I have that sort of nice center window on the 2nd floor of the home. These guides I created when I made this last window will be actually very helpful for making our steps leading up to our door. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to start at the corner here where this guide meets the ground. And I know that they were 4 feet apart, so I know they're making a rectangle that is 8 feet. So I'll type in 8 apostrophe and comma. And I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and say 8 inches. So that's going to be 8 quotation mark. So 8 feet by 8 inches. That's going to be my first step. I'm going to get my guide again, and I'm going to make a new guide 1 foot in from here. So I'll come in, I'll say 1 apostrophe, and I'm going to make another rectangle. Since I brought it in a foot this way, and I want to bring it in a foot over here, I'm taking off 2 feet from the 8, so this one's going to be 6 feet. So I'll start to make it, I'll stop, and I'll say 6 feet by 8 inches. I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to get my guides. I'm going to come in from here and do 1 foot. Get my rectangle, and I took off 2 more feet, so this is going to be 4 feet by 8 inches. And there you go. One last time, I'm going to bring a guide in. This time I'm going to bring it in about, let me think, if this is 2 feet, I'm going to bring this in 6 inches. And I am going to make my door now. My door I'm going to make, let's see, I'm going to make my door about 3 feet wide by about 7 feet tall. So 3 feet by 7 feet, and that's pretty good height. It's just about the top of the windows there, which is nice. And let's go ahead and bring this thing into 3 dimensions. So let's go ahead and grab our push-pull tool. I'm going to start with this bottom step, which I'm going to bring out a total of 3 feet, 3 apostrophe. The middle step I'll bring out 2 feet. The top step I'll bring out 1 foot. At some point I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these lines. That's too much. Control Z. Just to make it look nice. And I'm going to go ahead and offset the door just by about 2 inches. And I am going to go ahead and to create some more depth, I'm going to bring the frame of the door, if I can get it. So let me select it first. I'm going to bring it out 2 inches like I did for the window panes. I'm going to, actually, you know what, that's 1 inch. 1 inch. I'm going to bring the door back itself 2 inches. I made another line down there that I don't like, so I'm going to get my eraser tool and erase that. I find that by adding these little touches, it does really make the house look a little bit more three-dimensional, a little bit more real. So there you go. It's a nice looking little door with some steps leading up to it. And our house is really starting to come together.